Hello and welcome to the new first podcast for Ethan and Connor's 2014 World Cup podcast preview. I'm Connor, and I'm here with Ethan Plaza, the man, E-Bone Capone himself. What's good, Ethan?
How's it going, Connor?
So we're down in LA at the moment, and we've got some stuff we want to talk about. We're going to go over our college-style World Cup preview over the next few days. We'll be uploading podcasts. Anybody's free to listen. Anybody's free to sponsor us if for some reason you want to pay us money to do this. We're going to Brazil later in the summer as well to watch some of the games in person, and we can't wait. So what we're going to start with today after we go over some news. So we're going to break down the first group, and we're going to go group by group as we do some previews along with some other segments. But let's start out talking about the news. Ethan, Landon Donovan got cut from Team USA.
This is a real
What the
shame.
hell, man?
I don't notice it. I'm still pissed about it. I mean, leading goal scorer in all of USA history. He's been the face of U.S. soccer the last 12 years. This would have been his fourth World Cup. Everyone expected him to go, and then Klinsmann decides to just cut him from the squad. I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that USA was drawn into a group of death. Klinsmann's looking at 2018. His contract is extended through 2018. He's probably got the vote of confidence from USA Soccer that even if they lose in the first round, he'll still be around for 2018, which is why he's not bringing Donovan on board. A younger squad. He just, I guess, felt that Donovan wasn't important.
Well, wouldn't it be helpful at least to have Donovan for his experience?
That's what you think, but I guess he felt with Dempsey around and Bradley around, he already had enough experience on the roster. I don't know what to tell you.
Now, we watched a good amount of Team USA play last night, and, I mean, frankly, these wingers and Chris Wondolowski up top, they're not the same guy as Landon Donovan.
They really aren't, and USA was playing Azerbaijan last night, which is no soccer powerhouse, and they were playing Portugal, Germany, or Ghana the way they were playing Azerbaijan last night. It'll be a quick 3-and-out for Team USA. In Klinsmann's favor, though, I did think that Mix Driscoll and Aaron Johannesson, or however you say those names, weren't Landon Donovan quality, and those are two players that Landon Donovan should have started over or played over. However, those were the two goal scorers last night.
Yeah, I've watched the entire game. I was there a little later than you, but they did play well. Johansson really added a new element up top, and Mix was honestly probably the most creative player out on the field for Team USA, so got to give him props for that. But anyway, I'm sure we'll get around to this more when we get into Team USA's group preview. It's pretty sad, pretty crappy that Donovan's not out there, though. And for me, it's very disingenuous of Klinsmann. I think you were exactly right. Especially, he's just doing some sketchy stuff, honestly. He got kicked off Germany's team. Well, not kicked off, but fired because they thought Joachim Low was running the team. And looking at it, for example, look at last night's match against that they played. The coach of the other team is a scout for Team USA. My bet is that the only reason Team USA played that game is as a favor to this coach for scouting out the team. But I digress.
It's probably true. Going back to Donovan, it's a real shame that he won't be able to, finish up his career playing in the World Cup in Brazil. Had he played this World Cup, this would have obviously been his last, and I think that most people expected this to be his last World Cup instead of South Africa. And it's a shame he won't be able to, enjoy Brazil, but, that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
We'll always have that goal, right?
He will always have that goal against Algeria, yes. Yes. Still love that goal.
I remember going nuts to that. It was early in the morning as well. Anyway, moving on. Let's see. There's some other news. Some other big names got cut.
Yes. Diego Costa. What was that you were saying? Got cut?
Yeah, got cut. Some other guys got cut. Not in the hamstring. Costa got cut in the hamstring. But some other guys got cut. Samir Nasri did.
Samir Nasri did, yes. Manchester City man. French international. Or French international no more, but
Diego Costa might not be playing for Spain.
He might not, which would be a real shame. Spain needs it's hard to say that Spain needs something else, considering they've won the last World Cup in the last 2 Euros, but they really don't have a very strong striker up there. David Villa played an excellent World Cup in 2010, scoring 5 goals, and I don't expect him to do that again. If Costa were around, that would be a huge, huge difference maker for the Spanish national team, but hamstring tears, those aren't fun, and Costa could because his absence could really hurt the Spanish team.
There are an awful lot of great strikers missing from this World Cup. Like, we had some potential for some huge goal tournaments. Hopefully Falcao gets back in time, but he's not going to be at 100%.
Definitely.
We're missing Lewandowski. We're missing Zlatan.
Yeah, Zlatan and Falcao might be two of the best pure strikers. I'm talking pure number 9s out there. And there's a chance they both don't play in the World Cup, which would be a real shame. I mean, obviously Zlatan's not going to play, but it'd be disappointing if Falcao didn't play for his native Colombia, a team that doesn't always make it around to the World Cup.
That's arguably, if you throw in Costa, arguably 4 of the 5 best strikers in the world.
Definitely, yes.
Along with Cavani, of course.
Cavani will be playing.
Yeah, he will for Uruguay, but he'll be forced out on the... Oh, wait, you know who else is missing? Luis Suarez.
Luis Suarez, he has had some injury problems recently, hasn't he?
He's not going to be at the World Cup.
Is that for sure?
I think that is for sure.
Well, we'll wait and see. I mean, worst comes to worst. If he is at the World Cup, he'll probably, just commit a handball on the line and kill some poor country's dreams of advancing onto the groups to the semifinals. But I digress.
Josie's got to get his money. This is Josie's chance to get his money. But, okay, what about this? Are we going to have a World Cup? There have been an awful lot of protests, a lot of problems. I just read a survey earlier today. 48% of Brazilians would rather not have the World Cup.
48% of Brazilians.
Brazilians.
I'm not Brazilian. I haven't been to Brazil. I do know a few Brazilians, and they've all said similar stories along the lines that it's going to be crazy. A lot of people aren't happy it's happening, but at the end of the day, it's the World Cup. I mean, a lot of those surveys are biased. They could ask, 100 people in regions in like the favelas in Rio, where those people would feel that the money should be better allocated towards education instead of building stadiums, which they have a very strong case at. But at the same time, I feel that soccer is Brazil. I mean, Brazil is soccer. They love their football down there, and they'll turn out for the World Cup. There'll be a very strong Brazilian turnout, of course. I don't know about 42% don't want the World Cup. Obviously, some people don't, but at the end of the day, I think Brazil will host a great tournament.
Well, what about like the metro lines that were supposed to be built that haven't been built? They're partway through digging tunnels for Line 4 in Rio.
There's definitely some infrastructure issues, and considering how many billions and billions of dollars Brazil has put towards the World Cup, it's very disappointing that they haven't been able to get a stronger infrastructure in place. I remember reading once that Brazil spent more money on this World Cup than South Africa, Germany, and Korea, Japan did, the last 3 World Cup hosts combined. So Brazil has definitely been writing a lot of checks to host this World Cup, and I mean, there's been a lot of issues with the amount of money they're putting forward. There really shouldn't be this many issues, and we're gonna have to wait and see how that turns out. But at the moment, it is not looking too hot for the South Americans.
Odds that Brazil becomes a basketball country after a horrific failure.
Zero.
For this World Cup.
Just zero. Stupid question.
All right, moving on. Speaking of Brazil, let's talk about their team. That's what we're here for. We're here to do Group A. Brazil, obviously, the host country, has Group A. And honestly, let's run through the teams. It's Brazil, Mexico, Croatia, and Cameroon. Doesn't look like too tough a group for Brazil.
It does not look like too tough a group for Brazil. You have Mexico and Croatia, 2 teams that needed playoffs to qualify. Mexico going through New Zealand, Croatia going through Iceland, and Cameroon qualifying through the African qualifications. Iceland, that Croatia had to go through, not a very strong side. Their population is about 300,000 people. New Zealand also...
Size of Tacoma.
New Zealand also isn't the most potent team out there. So you can make the case that Mexico and Croatia really don't deserve to be the World Cup. Now, of course, they did make it, but they could have very easily been on the outside looking in. Brazil, they qualified as the host. They haven't played a competitive game in a while. They didn't go through qualifying, so it's a lot less competitive game than they would probably have liked to play, considering they have a very young squad. Of course, they have played friendlies, but friendlies are different than World Cup qualifiers. So really, Cameroon, one might argue, is the only team that really qualified for the World Cup. And with that in mind, I think they might win the group.
Cameroon winning the group?
I kid, of course.
I will sell you both my knees if Cameroon makes it through this group. Maybe a ball sack. We'll see.
Yeah. All right, but the Brazil team is very good, very young, and they have extremely, extremely high expectations. Everyone in Brazil, whether they want Brazil to host the World Cup or not, wants Brazil to win the World Cup.
Yeah, here's something interesting that I'm seeing looking through this Brazilian squad. Brazil's known as a really flashy attacking side, right? They've got some of the trickiest great players of all time. You have old, chubby Ronaldo, not to be confused with Cristiano. For those who are more recent soccer fans, they had Ronaldinho, maybe some of the best footwork of all time, really, there. Guys like Pele, and they have Neymar, and Neymar is definitely willing to flash some moves, but then they've got a lot of functional players on that team as well. Luis Gustavo in the center mid. That defense is rock solid.
That defense is very good, and they say defense wins championships, and I'm a very strong believer in that theory. They got Silva, PSG, who many consider to be the best defender in the world. They have Dani Alves, who's a good defender, a good attacking defender, who plays for Barcelona.
Let's not forget they have the most expensive defender in the world.
And David Luiz, yes, PSG decided to spend 50 million, was it pounds or euros?
It was pounds.
50 million pounds to sign David Luiz from Chelsea, a questionable signing in my opinion. But either way, he will be playing in Brazil for free. And they have Dante, one of Mark Stinson's favorite players, back on defense.
Dante. Luiz's transfer is okay. It's good for Chelsea. I'm a Chelsea fan. It's nice to see us being able to sell a player once in a while instead of just buying them for exorbitant amounts of money. But let's not talk about that. But it's sad to see my favorite player in the world, Alex, getting moved out of his starting spot for David Luiz.
Okay, let's move back to Group A. No need to talk about PSG-Chelsea dynamics.
Can we crack these beers first?
Sure thing.
Making it a rule. We're going to enjoy some beer as we talk about soccer, because who doesn't love that? And we're going to drink from a country in the group for every single podcast. So right now, we're enjoying some of the finest Mexican brews. Corona, you might say? No. A lesser-known brand called Tecate.
I don't know about lesser known. Definitely lesser in taste. But this isn't a beer podcast. It's a soccer podcast.
Lesser in price.
Lesser in price. That's why we're drinking it.
Anyway, still better than Coors. Sorry again to Mark Stinson, but Brazil's team arguably better defensively than attacking, which is shocking for them. But one thing they need to worry about is they have some players who have some disciplinary issues. Brazil's team is probably the most likely in this group to get carded, I would say. With guys like Luis Gustavo, the defense, Ramirez, if he comes off the bench, is basically a red card waiting to happen. This is a very physical team.
This isn't something, the cards aren't something that I think they need to worry about in the group stage because they're in an easy group, but come the round of 16, come the quarterfinals, if you get players racking up cards, they can start missing games. You obviously don't want that to happen. In the group stage, they get a red card, 2 or 3, no big deal because they're significantly better than all the other teams in this group. They'll walk through the group no problem, even if they get a red card a game. However, once they start playing very stronger sides, much stronger sides, Germany, Spain, Argentina, other teams that have potential to win the World Cup, that's when those cards can come and hurt them. Against Mexico, Croatia, Cameroon, it's no big deal because it's Mexico, Croatia, and Cameroon. No offense to Mexico, Croatia, and Cameroon.
And, okay, do you think Neymar has it in him to be that guy? I was reading an opinion on the Brazilian team, and it mentioned that this team doesn't have the same names that past teams have, which is true. Like guys like Fred and Hulk are good players, but there are definitely questions about their ability to lead the line. It's really all Neymar, and he's only 22. Is he ready for this? He had a tough season at Barcelona.
He did have a tough season at Barcelona, and there was a lot of pressure on Neymar. Definitely more pressure on Neymar than there should be, but that's what happens when your country hosts a World Cup. Will he be ready? I think he will. This is something that Neymar has been preparing for a long time. It didn't just suddenly get thrown on him. He's known that he was going to be the best player on the Brazilian team for a long time. He's played in the Champions League. He's played on Barcelona, a team that has a lot of pressure on it. And I think he'll be able to come through and perform for Brazil. If not, people will be disappointed, to say the least. But I think Neymar's up to the challenge, up to the task.
The guy kind of epitomizes what you think of with Brazilian soccer. He's got all the moves. He scores the goals. He's got the wild hairstyle. He's a star.
No doubt, he is a star. In this World Cup, if he plays on his A game, scores maybe 4 or 5 goals, which is no easy task, he could, at the end of the World Cup, a lot of people could be calling him one of the best players in the world, which at this moment he isn't one of the best players in the world, but he's definitely in probably the top 20, probably not the top 10 right now. And at the end of this World Cup, if he does have a good World Cup, a lot of people could be putting him in that top 10 category.
And it's a totally different dynamic, him on Brazil. So when he's with Barcelona, you know he's the secondary player to Messi, and we know Messi has some maybe ego issues where he needs to be the top dog, and he gets very upset when he feels threatened.
Let's not be throwing Messi under the bus here, all right?
This is
Barcelona and Brazil, though, are two very different teams. And on Barcelona, Neymar isn't the best player. He might not even be the second best player if Xavi's playing on his A game. But on Brazil, he is the best player. He's the focal point of everything on that Brazilian team. And he is not on Barcelona. However, he's still a very good player in Barcelona. He's still a very important player for Barcelona. And he obviously will have a bigger role in Brazil, and I think he'll be able to step up to the plate and perform.
And he's really only one of Barcelona's few options for direct attacking. Like, you can give him the ball, he'll go at people, he'll try and get in behind. And he's going to be given a huge platform to do that for Brazil. Now, looking at the rest of the Brazilian team, biggest omission, Alex, right?
Yeah, definitely Alex.
Lucas Moura didn't make the team. Neither did Kaká, Ronaldinho, any of the older guys.
We knew going into this was going to be a very young Brazilian team. There was no way that Kaká and Ronaldinho were going to make the squad.
No Adriano.
No Adriano. No
Multi-time winner of the Golden Trash Can in Italy for the worst player in Serie A. The only multi-time winner.
We knew this was going to be a young team. I don't know what the average age is of this team, but if I had to guess, it'd probably be 23. They are a young team. They've been building for 2014 pretty much ever since their collapse in 2010, losing out to the Dutch in the quarterfinals. And they have very high expectations. They're a team built for 2014 and for 2018, but especially for 2014.
And they're a serious contender, right?
Very serious contender.
Especially at home.
Oh, yeah. They might be the top contender, them up with Spain and Germany, but definitely the top three. If they don't at least make it to the semifinals, it'll be I'd say it'd be very disappointing.
Are they gonna lose any games or drop any points in this group?
In this group, no, they will win 9 points. You disagree?
No, I think you're right.
I see no reason why they don't win 9 points.
Yeah, no, there's no reason. I don't think so at all.
Someone like Samuel Eto'o decides to just carry the team and score 3 goals, would maybe then they tie a game. But I highly doubt it.
Man, speaking of Samuel Eto'o, he's had a lot of troubles with Mourinho recently. Called him a puppet. He said that he's going to show his best on the World Cup scene when his age was questioned. He says he's 33. Mourinho says, I don't know how old he is. But can Samuel Eto'o carry Cameroon to anything?
Well,
are they just happy to be there?
They're happy to be there. Them making it out of the group would be a big success. I mean, they're Cameroon. They have Samuel Eto'o. They have Alex Song. They don't have too much going for them. The fact that they made it to the World Cup is good for Cameroon. Maybe they'll win a game. Maybe they can beat Croatia. There's a chance they make it out of this group just because Mexico's been playing so poorly recently. And as I mentioned earlier, both Croatia and Mexico had needed playoffs to enter the World Cup. So maybe they tie a game and win a game. And, they make it out of the group. Maybe they win 2 games. There's a chance they make it out if Alex Song and Samuel Eto'o are playing well. Alex Song just dropping dimes to Eto'o. Eto'o has to probably have to score in every game. But, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
Samuel Eto'o will have to average 4 goals per game and 6 against Brazil in order for them to get anywhere near advancing. This team is really not built to defend, practically really to attack even. They've only got a couple decent players in there. They have defenders who play for Galatasaray, which is well known as one of the worst defensive teams around the better teams in Europe, and other guys playing for small clubs. I don't see it as really a team that can challenge at all.
Neither do I. If they were in another group, I wouldn't give them a chance, but because they're in a weaker group, I give them a chance. If they were obviously in the U.S.'s group, no way. Or Spain's group, no way. But they're not. They have Mexico, a team that's been playing very poorly recently, and Croatia, another questionable team. So I don't expect them to just flop out. They'll put up a challenge. They'll put up a fight.
Do you think they can draw a point?
Oh yeah, I think they can draw a point. I expect them to draw at least a point.
So they've got Mexico first. Then they've got Then they've got Brazil. Or excuse me, they have Mexico, then they have Croatia, then Brazil.
All right. So if they go into that Brazil game with already, 3-4 points, well, they'd have to go into that Brazil game with at least 4 points. Maybe, they go into that Brazil game and Brazil's already got 6 points in clinch. They play their B-side and then they get a lucky point against Brazil. Unlikely, but possible. We'll see.
Yeah, let's not spend any more time on Cameroon. I really think of all the teams, they have the worst opportunity for advancing, and I don't think they're even going to get a point. I don't think they match the quality of any of these other sides.
All right.
So really, in my opinion at least, what this comes down to for qualifying is these other two teams. We have Croatia and we have Mexico. Each team, pretty consistent, or at least Mexico has been a consistent World Cup contender. Croatia has a good history in the sport, going back to its Yugoslavian days.
Mexico's been a contender for what? Making it the quarterfinals? They never made it past the quarterfinals. They're not contenders. They're not happy to be there.
Oh, they're in there.
They're in there.
Always in there.
They've always been there.
15 years, I believe.
Or 15 World Cups. They've always been there, but they haven't always, done well. The farthest they made it is the quarterfinals, which they've done twice, both times when they hosted. Other than that, they've never made it to the round of 16. Or past the round of 16. In this World Cup, I don't see them also making it past the round of 16, if they even make it out of the group.
Well, let's talk about Croatia first. Croatia's got the best player of those two, maybe the best player in the entire thing, at least the best midfielder, in Luka Modric.
In the entire group?
In the entire group, best midfielder.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Luka Modric is a very good player. Had a good game for Real Madrid against Eto'o in the Champions League final. And Luka Modric, he's the one that he holds that team together, and he's going to have to be playing on his A game if Croatia plans on advancing out of that group.
Yeah, so Croatia plays a pretty conservative 4-5-1. They want to keep the ball, and then they're solid on the counter. They've got Mandzukic up top. He's a great target in the air, and when you keep the ball, you've got to have crossing as a weapon, just in case the team that you're playing sort of parks the bus. I'm not too worried about, say, Cameroon parking the bus against them, because I think their defense is too disorganized.
Mexico might, though.
Mexico might.
Mexico and Croatia, well, that'll be a big game.
And that is the last game in the group.
That could be a decider.
Croatia to me is just it's a team of have and have-nots. You've got really great players like Mandzukic, like Modric, like Dario Srna on the right back. Like, they have some really good guys. Ivan Perisic, if you've never seen highlights of him, go watch him. He's going to be playing as their left or right midfielder. I think they're right midfielder, and he is audacious. He'll just take a shot from just about anywhere, and isn't pretty good at scoring from them. But they have good players. I remember watching in Euro 2012, and I thought that Croatia's problem was that they ran out of ideas after a while once they started playing the bigger teams.
Well, that'd be good enough to get them to the group stage. They only play one, I guess, big team there. Can Croatia advance? They definitely can advance to the round of 16. Like we said earlier, Brazil, expect them to get 9 points. Croatia gets 6, maybe 4 points against Mexico and Cameroon. They will likely make it out.
Yeah, and another thing to note, Mandzukic will be missing the first game against Brazil. So that's even more reason for Croatia to have to park the bus against Brazil's team. It wouldn't be surprising to me if we saw a frustrated but still victorious Brazil. But instead, Croatia's actually going to have to start Nikita Jelavic, who has been very out of form when he was at Everton. In fact, I was at the Everton store recently, and I saw it was the very end of the year. When they're trying to get rid of everything. Everything's on sale. They only have the unwanted items left, and the biggest item in there was this beautiful shirt that said, "Follow the Jelavic Road," and a picture of the Wizard of Oz and Nikita Jelavic, who I think only scored 1 goal for Everton this season, but they decided to print hundreds of the thing, and nobody bought it. Jelavic, not a good option up top, point being. I think that Croatia is going to have a difficult time getting through teams, even with Modric, even with Mandzukic. Mandzukic is a great forward, but he's not always that goal scorer.
No, he's not. He does play on Bayern Munich, one of the best teams in Europe. However, I just don't know if Croatia has enough to really make it deep into this World Cup.
They have a really bad defense. I was watching some highlights of them from other teams, and There's just no organization back there. The midfielders don't really get back. I mean, Modric is not a great at defending from the midfield. He's a great ball possessor. He's a great passer. And the other thing about Croatia is that they started out really hot in their qualification. As soon as Euro 2012 ended, they were really on fire. They were doing really well in their group. And then suddenly, towards the end, about June 2013, they start losing games. They're in a really bad run of form. They beat Iceland 2-0, but, I mean, you got to do better than that coming into the World Cup, right?
They beat Iceland at home 2-0. They tied Iceland 0-0 in Reykjavik. And as we mentioned earlier, Iceland has a population of about 300,000 people, so beating Iceland 2-0, although it's good that they made it, it's also not the biggest accomplishment in the world. No offense to the Icelandic population out there. But Croatia, had they been matched up against Portugal, France, or Sweden in the World Cup playoffs, we would not be talking about them right now because they wouldn't have qualified.
Our many Icelandic listeners are going to write you some big-time shit-talking emails. Anyway, moving forward. Yeah, I mean, they're losing to teams like Scotland. Like, it's okay to lose to Portugal.
Of course.
It's not all right to lose to Scotland, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, they'll be playing against Mexico, really, for this last qualifying spot. And Mexico has the fortune of playing Cameroon first, so...
Is it really a fortune, though? I mean, Samuel Eto'o just raining down bombs on them.
Ethan, it's essentially winning the lottery. You might as well be millionaires out there, and I mean, they are, but this Mexican team really is going to go up 3, probably 0 over Croatia. Not in the score, but in terms of points. They're going to have 3 off Cameroon, even if Eto'o scores 5 goals. And Croatia is probably not going to have much out of that Brazil game. So they're going to have the psychological advantage there, I think.
Well, that is true, but Croatia, I guess, I don't want to say they expect to lose to Brazil, but they know what they're up against. And it's only one game. You don't want to look too much into it. All the teams know that there's 3 games in each group, and they need to show up for all 3 games.
Mexico is looking extremely disjointed recently.
Oh, yeah.
They made it through in the playoffs after finishing only 4th in CONCACAF. After only finishing 4th, because Team USA beat Panama on the last day in a game they didn't need to win, Mexico could have not gone through at all. They played New Zealand, and they won 9-3 on aggregate, which to me speaks more about the state of soccer in New Zealand than in Mexico. But what happened to this team? They won the Gold Cup in 2011. They won the 2012 Olympics, even though that's a youth tournament. But still, they beat Brazil, of all teams.
Oh, yeah.
And now they're just falling apart.
And the Brazil team that they did beat was basically the same Brazil team we're going to see in the 2014 World Cup. It included Neymar, Hulk, Fred. It was a very young, very good team. And yeah, Mexico finished behind the United States. Not the big deal to finish behind the United States. They finished behind Costa Rica and Honduras. Costa Rica and Honduras, 2 countries much smaller than them, and Mexico has a much better football history than Costa Rica and Honduras. And like you said, the only way that they did even make it to the playoffs was that the U.S. beat Panama. Had the U.S. tied or lost to Panama, or the U.S. lost to Panama, then Panama would have made the World Cup over Mexico, which is absurd to think that Mexico wouldn't even be in the World Cup. Now, Mexico has gone through many coaches in the last couple of years. I don't know what number they're on. I lose track. I think it was number 4 in the last 1 or 2 years. It's been
at least
bad.
15.
It's been bad. It's been bad. The state of Mexican soccer right now is not looking good. If they get their stuff together, which I don't think they will in time for the World Cup, they will be a very good team. However, they've shown potential to be a very good team. I don't think that they are going to do it in 2014, but eventually, though, they will.
The player turnover there has been almost incredible. Like, for example, in the New Zealand match, there was no Dos Santos and there was no Chicharito. 2 of the biggest names with Mexican soccer. They had to bring back Marquez, who we thought was done, had retired, in order to do this. They switched their formation to an archaic 5-3-2, which you got to do what you got to do, but how are they going to get through Croatia with 1 center mid against Modric?
It won't happen. I mean, defense first, I guess, but 5-3-2. Yes, and Marquez, I haven't heard his name in a while, but he is back on the Mexican national team.
Even now, they just played that friendly against Israel and had a nice little send-off to Chiquitamo Blanco, who actually got the start. You know, it's his last international game, so a little tribute for the old legend. I once had a coach tell me that he saw Blanco come out onto the field and thought unbelievable because, you know, Blanco's a little chunky. So there's no way this guy can play. And then he saw his feet moving. His feet were about 100 times faster than the rest of his body. Turns out Blanco's a good player. But, you know, Blanco was in the starting lineup. Chicharito came off the bench, and he was only the second striker to come off as well. He wasn't even the first striker coming on. Mexico did win 3-1. There's some hope, but they've been struggling.
Israel, all right, not the soccer powerhouse. Watch out Saturday as they take on Ecuador, the real South American soccer powerhouses.
The most likely team in the World Cup to finish with no points, Ecuador.
Watch out Brazil and Argentina, all right? The real South American powerhouse, Ecuador is knocking on the door. And they play Saturday, I want to say New York. A little slightly biased Ecuadorian over here, but...
Ecuador is going to get 0 points.
All right, we're not talking about Ecuador.
Ecuador might get -1 points.
Shut up. We're talking about Mexico.
How many goals against... What does your goal differential have to be to get -1 point? Like minus 25?
Ecuador's going to advance.
Mexico, though, I mean, we can't say it enough. They've been struggling. They only finished 2-5-3 in qualifying, which is great, but also appalling that they qualified. And that is a real statistic.
Is that so? Only 2 wins out of the 10 games they played.
Only 2 wins.
That's embarrassing for a team that's supposed to be the class of North America in soccer. Only 2 wins.
Of course, we're loving it. At least I'm loving it.
I mean, they might need 2 wins to make it through the group, and that's only 3 games. And in 10 games playing against teams including Jamaica and Panama who didn't qualify for the World Cup, they were only able to get 2 wins.
Did you say Panama?
Yeah, Panama. They didn't qualify for the World Cup.
Why do you say it like that?
Like what? Panama.
Panama.
Shut up. I don't know how. Panama. Whatever. Either way, they're not going to be in the World Cup. Mexico is.
All right. Now here's the thing. Here's the question. Who's struggling more, Croatia or Mexico?
Mexico. But yes, Mexico, but don't give Mexico too much credit. It's like a comedy of errors between those 2 teams.
Now here's what I have a belief, though.
When their play is going to be a 0-0 draw.
I really hope not. We've trashed on Mexico for about the past 5 minutes.
Lo siento, Mexico. Okay.
Here's what I've got to say. The Mexican team has as much heart as really any team you'll ever see. They do not die. For example, back on better days, the Gold Cup 2011. This was a very, very sad moment for me. Team USA was leading 2-0. This will be forever remembered as the one and only Freddie Eto'o game. Freddie was balling. Team USA goes up 2-0. This is in the final for the Gold Cup. And somehow Mexico storms back and wins 4-2, including one of the greatest goals I've ever seen by Eto'o dos Santos.
I remember that game.
This team has a lot of talent. They have good players.
They do. They certainly do, which is why it's so embarrassing that they just got absolutely railed in qualification.
They refuse to quit.
That was the old Mexico. A year and a half ago, that was them. They definitely refused to quit. However, that was a year and a half ago. And recently, as we've just mentioned with the 2 wins in the last 10 games, that really hasn't been Mexico. They've been tying Jamaica. They just haven't been playing good soccer.
They got through, though.
They did get through, and they definitely can turn it around in the World Cup and do work. But I just don't know if that's going to happen.
All right. Here's another factor that we have to play in. Let's say both these teams beat Cameroon, then they draw against each other. They've both lost to Brazil. Now they're on 4 points each, and it becomes a goal differential question. Croatia or Mexico, who's more likely to have those goals?
I think the question in there is who's going to be beat up less by Brazil and who would beat up more on Cameroon. And I'd have to say Mexico. I'd have to say Mexico. I think their offense could come alive against Cameroon. I mean, of course, I'd be rooting for Cameroon, but I'd have to say Mexico. But then again, you could really flip a coin on that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you on Mexico. I think that Croatia's offense can get stagnant sometimes. I also think their defense is a little shaky, so I wouldn't be surprised if they let in a goal against Cameroon or really weren't able to put anything past Brazil. This Mexican team has the creativity. They have the players. I'd be surprised if they didn't score against Brazil. Honestly, I think they'll lose pretty conclusively.
Brazil is a very good defense, though. I would not be surprised if they did not score.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be surprised if they did score, would you?
No, I wouldn't. I suppose that's true.
Yeah, they scored on Italy. They beat Japan in the Confederations Cup just last year.
Like we were saying earlier, that was last year. It was a very different Mexico team last year to now.
Now, I'm a big believer in Mexico's fight. I think that they're going to qualify over Croatia. I think they can beat Croatia even and advance with 6 points.
I think they could too. Of course, I'd like to see Cameroon, but odds are it would be Brazil and Mexico going. At least I think it'll be Brazil and Mexico going through.
So, final verdict for the group stage. We have poor, poopy Cameroon down in last.
Whoa. Let's not call them poopy. Samuel Eto'o is a stud.
All right.
Cameroon.
Samuel Eto'o and Alex Song will finish last, and a bunch of other guys. Croatia will fight hard, but is a little too disjointed and will not advance. They'll finish third. We've got Mexico in second because we are believers in what Mexico does. Maybe that's a bias because we get to see them often, but I see them going through. And they have another advantage, Ethan. They've banned sex for the World Cup. Did you see that one?
I did see that. I don't know if I'd call it an advantage, but I've heard of multiple other teams banning sex for the World Cup. Once the World Cup rolls around, you'll probably hear other teams that are quote banning sex or banning drinking or banning going to bed past 10 p.m. But I wouldn't look too much into that.
Sounds like probably your team when you were growing up, huh? Your coach banning all that?
Oh boy, I was on a whatever. Okay.
That's an advantage to me. The Mexican team has it right because in the past they've been caught with prostitutes, gotten in trouble for banned substances.
Well, Mexico is focusing on soccer. That's good. I'm glad that they have a soccer first mentality. I mean, Brazil, they can have a lot of fun down in Brazil, but they're there to play soccer. They're not there to party, to drink, to flirt with the girls, go to the beach. They're there for football only.
And we saw Chicharito said earlier today that, I believe it was earlier today, that he sees his team possibly making the final. That's good confidence. You got to love that. That's the thing I love about the Mexican team. I might, not be rooting for them, but you have to admire the fact that they really dream big and they don't think they can lose.
Well, that's good. Even when they're down and out, they're not down and out just yet, but even when they were down and out, even when many people were counting against them, they still thought they could make it through, and they did. And here in the World Cup, they have potential. They really do have potential.
And lastly, we've got Brazil winning the group.
I don't see a way where Brazil doesn't win this group.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see ways where Mexico doesn't advance, but I don't see a way where Brazil doesn't win the group.
We meant to have this on this podcast. We'll have to get around to it. We're going to be adding a segment every time called 5 Minutes of Ignorance, where we let one of our soccer friends, knowledgeable or not, go off on why they think their favorite team, rationally or not, may win the World Cup. And we're going to have our buddy Matt come in and talk about Mexico. I'm sure there'll be time for that in the future. But for now, that's our group preview. We've got a couple other things before we head out. So first, let's talk about another segment that we're going to do, which is my favorite team power rankings. Essentially, every podcast, I'm going to talk about 4 teams in order of where I'd like to see them finish in the World Cup if you ranked every team 32-1. So this one, let's talk about the teams I've got at the very bottom. Starting with number 32, the very last team I'd like to see win the World Cup. Russia.
Well, for whatever, disagreements Barack and Vladimir might be having, I don't want to let that interfere with, some good old-fashioned soccer. So everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but, let the politicians be politicians and let the soccer just stay on the field.
I've just got to say, that's our rival. Maybe not on the field, but that's our just long time, past 100 years, primary rival, and they're at it again. There's some definite human rights violations going on over in the Ukraine. This isn't a political podcast, and it's not going to be about politics for the other 31 teams, but except maybe near number 1. We'll talk about that later, but, Russia, are you serious? What are you doing right now? You definitely can't win the World Cup. How did you host an Olympics?
Well, they're going to be hosting a World Cup in about 4 years from now.
I'm disgusted. Anyway, moving on. This one I'm sure you'll have more disagreements with. Number 31, I've got Spain as my second to last team that I would like to see win the World Cup.
And you're certainly right. I will have many disagreements about that, from the fact that I've been a Spanish national team fan for a number of years, and that I spent a semester abroad in Madrid in the fall. So of course I absolutely love Spain and would love to see Spain win the World Cup.
So bored of Spain. First of all, 2 reasons. I'm bored of Spain.
Dynasty. One word. Dynasty.
Oh, my Lord. I'm bored of Spain winning, first of all. I am so sick of seeing Spain win every... Oh, goodness, I want to yell and curse. Every competition that they play in. They won the World Cup. They won 2 Euros in a row. Oh, my goodness. I'm almost
did they
beside
deserve
myself.
to win those? Yeah, they deserve to win those. So you can't
Either way,
you can't really hate on them.
It's boring. Are you bored of the Heat yet?
I don't really follow basketball.
Are you bored of the Seahawks?
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm bored of the Seahawks.
NFL champions, at least for 1 year running, soon to be 5. And the other thing I'm bored with Spain about is I'm so bored of their style of play. I remember seeing Barcelona for the first time. This was back when I really started watching closely. So it wasn't really the first time I'd seen Barcelona, but it was the first time I watched really intently. They were playing Bayern Munich in the Champions League. I think this was about 2007. They were just starting Pep's era. They were keeping the ball forever. Oh, my goodness. It was appalling. It wasn't appalling. It's beautiful, great soccer, but it's not fun to watch. It's really not fun to watch one team keep the ball 70% of the time, unless you're a big fan of that particular team. I've never been a fan of Spain's team.
I have always been a fan of Spain, so seeing them have the ball constantly really isn't much of a struggle. It doesn't feel wrong at all. And they have a very, very strong midfield. Not the strongest attack. A lot of that depends on Diego Costa's injury. Very strong midfield. So it's easier for them to keep the ball for this long periods of time. Xavi, Iniesta.
I'd so much rather see a back and forth game. They choke the life out of every team they play. They choke the life out of the game.
When they won in 2010, almost every single game they played in was a 1-0 win. There were a few games that weren't 1-0 wins, but...
Spain destroys casual soccer fans. True or false?
False.
All right. This next team that I have, definitely that statement is true of. Let's talk about number 30, Greece. Maybe the worst attacking team in the entire World Cup.
Greece.
Did you ever see them play in Euro 2004?
I did see them play not 2004. So I'm playing Euro 2012. I don't know about 2004.
They are awful.
Well, let's not be throwing Greece under the bus too much.
They're not bad. They're not a bad team. And this is coming from a person who grew up playing defense his entire life. They're not fun to watch. They can't attack. They don't try to attack. They don't defend that well either. They just have a lot of bodies back there. They won Euro 2004 on a series of 1-0 victories, sort of like Spain in the World Cup. I hate watching every single Greece match that I've ever watched in my life. It is appallingly boring.
Well, I'm sorry that you feel so strongly about this, Connor, but...
Well, they wouldn't be number 30 if I didn't feel so strongly about it.
That's true. Obviously, you must. I don't really have much to say about the Greek national team, to be honest. I have seen them play a few times, and I don't have much to say. I'd like to go to Greece one day, but that has nothing to do with their soccer team.
Yeah, well, when you play a 9-0-1, then I'm not interested. It's the opposite of Spain. They never keep the ball. In fact, watching Spain-Greece might be the most boring possible game that you could set up amongst any national team. Because Greece somehow won't get scored on for a while. They have big guys back there. I don't think they're that great defensively, but they're big. And...
Well, I don't think we're going to be able to find out because I don't believe those two teams are on course to match up. But, regardless, I don't know. I don't really have much to say about the Greek soccer.
Good.
All right, Connor, do you have a number?
And I have one more team. Number 28, and it is one of two U.S. rivals. Which one is it? It's Mexico. I do not like the Mexican national team whatsoever. And is it because I'm American? Of course it's because I'm American. I really don't want to see Mexico win because I have friends who are huge Mexico supporters, even though they have lived in the United States their whole lives, and so have their parents. But all they want to see is Mexico beat the U.S. or win the World Cup.
Yeah, I also know a lot of, living in Los Angeles or living in just the U.S. in general. I also know a lot of Mexican people who actually aren't very Mexican, but they also like to think that they're very Mexican. Matt. So they, root for the Mexican national team. And I must say that although there are certainly a lot of Mexican soccer fans out there who are definitely very passionate about their sport, and the Mexican population in general is very passionate about soccer, very passionate about their national team, so I respect that. But it's just annoying that I know so many Mexican people who, although nothing against Mexican people, these Mexican people that I'm referring to aren't very Mexican, yet still won't root for the U.S. and will root for Mexico, even if one of their parents is born in the U.S. and one of their parents is from Mexico. And that is something that I have never understood, as one of my parents is from the United States, one of my parents is from Ecuador, and I still root for the United States over Ecuador when those two teams meet, which is very rarely, unlike with the case of the United States and Mexico. But regardless, seeing Mexico win the World Cup, I mean, I'd be okay with it just because, I know that there's a lot of very passionate Mexican soccer fans out there, and it's been a tough year for Mexico, but they wouldn't be my number 1 or 2 or even top 10 choice team to win the World Cup.
But you wouldn't have them at 29.
I might have them at 29 if I had to, start ranking teams to win, because there's no teams out there that I would hate to see win the World Cup. So they might be that far down that list, but I don't know.
Ethan, you gotta find some passion. How to reinvigorate.
I just don't have passion for teams, not winning the World Cup out. Or I don't have, at least I have teams that I'd love to see win, but not teams I'd hate to see win.
Yeah, well, all right. Whatever. I would hate to see Mexico win. Sorry to my Mexican soccer fan friends. I'm not actually sorry at all. Fuck Mexico. Go USA. Mexico's okay as a country. Just not, as a team.
All right, moving on.
All right. Last order of business before we're done. And we go play FIFA and preview this group. Who's going to be the top goal scorer, at least out of this group?
Out of this group, Neymar. I don't see a way that it's not Neymar.
You don't think Dos Santos can get a couple?
A couple, sure. But just during the group stage, I think it'll be Neymar. There's a chance that it's not Neymar, that it's maybe Dos Santos, maybe Eto'o, maybe even Mandzukic. No, Mandzukic is missing again. It won't be Mandzukic. In the course of the entire tournament, Neymar. I wouldn't be surprised if Neymar is the leading goal scorer in the entire tournament, let alone in just this group.
Do you have a thought for that? Who top goal scorer for the tournament will be?
I know that he's constantly under fire, and many people consider him to not be the best player of all time because he has not performed well in the World Cup. But I am hoping that this year will be different. Lionel Messi, best player, arguably most people consider him to be the best player on the planet. This year, I probably would say that he wasn't the best player on the planet, but overall, I think he is the best player on the planet, and I think that he will be the top goal scorer in 2014.
Oh, interesting.
I really hope that Messi comes alive this World Cup. He's playing on his home continent, not his home country, but his home continent, and I think Argentina will do very well, and I think that I think that Messi will be a leading goal scorer of the World Cup.
All right. I'm going to go with a little different direction, a little lesser-known name. I'm going to go with Edson Cavani. Especially with Suarez not participating in this World Cup. Cavani's going to have that striker role to himself, the one that he's always coveted, because he always has to play on the wing for Uruguay, and he really, he defends well, but you can tell he doesn't like it. You can see it in his body language. He'll always work hard and won't complain, but you can see it. And he did complain, I guess, actually, about doing the same with PSG for Zlatan. The guy hasn't been able to play as a sole striker since he was at Napoli, and he really reined in the goals there. I see Uruguay having a good World Cup, and I see Cavani, actually, being a huge part of that, scoring several goals. I think he could get as many as 7.
7?
Now, in the past few World Cups, we've seen 5 be the number that players top out at.
Yeah, 5 tends to be the number, the ceiling for a lot of players. Possible to break? Of course it's possible to break 5. But last World Cup, I think we had 3 players that hit 5. David Villa, Diego Forlan, and Thomas Mueller, correct?
Yeah, I think David Luiz was up there too. I think you were about to say that.
I almost did say David Luiz. Excuse me, David Villa.
Yeah, and I think the year before that, Croatia had 5 in
I believe
2006,
so,
and
in
he was the
Germany.
leader. But you go back to 2002, old Ronaldo had 8.
True.
It's not unheard of.
It's not unheard of. Difficult? Oh, yeah.
I'm going to say Cavani gets 7. And if we're in South America, there's going to be
It
goals.
is. Right? Uruguay, right next to Brazil. However, he is in a very tough group with England and Italy. I do expect Uruguay to come out of that group. However, it wouldn't be the biggest surprise in the world if England and Italy advance. And I don't expect Costa Rica to do much. But we'll talk about that group later. I do expect Cavani to move on. But, as I said, it wouldn't be the biggest surprise if Uruguay goes packing early.
All right. I'd say that's just about it for our first podcast. We're clocking in at just around 50 minutes. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you found it. So I hope you liked it, and send in comments, complaints, thoughts, whatever to eplaza1@lion.lmu.edu. Yeah. All right. Thanks, bitches.